So let's start with the case for change. And so the creation of our office was really informed by 5 market trends that I want to spend a little bit of time on. Industry disruption, workforce evolution, more competitive R&D and startup environments, increasing importance of smart infrastructure, and then regional asset growth. So the first market trend is industry disruption. The last 10 years have shown a strong domestic auto industry, but Michigan's per capita income remains below the national average. What this means is that a strong domestic auto industry no longer guarantees widely shared prosperity in Michigan. The last decade has seen 4 foundational technologies, electric, autonomous, shared, and connected, disrupt the mobility and electrification supply chain. And this disruption is creating and shifting profit pools and creating new winners and losers. And if you look at the bar chart, you'll notice how the relationship between emerging and classic profit pools are expected to play out over the next 15 years, with emerging pools being profits from vehicles and components with new electrified, autonomous, connected, and shared tech. And then for the classic profit pool, profits from vehicles with components from gas-powered or internal combustion engines. Now, when it comes to Michigan, electric vehicle technology, we have about an 11% share of the North American EV production market. And that's expected to fall to 8%. So we really have to be laser focused over the next couple of years to retain that production. With autonomous vehicle technology, more than 50% of Michigan's auto industry works on projects related to autonomous vehicles in state. To us, that's just not enough. So we're going to be targeting increased investment within our mobility ecosystem. And then when it comes to connected and shared technologies, Michigan suppliers have contributed the most to the state's auto employment since 2013. But the car is changing, and so is the content that these suppliers need to provide. And the supply chain impact has been really noticeable with traditional automakers. They're producing parts in-house again, like e-axles, to claim a greater share of value. New OEMs are challenging traditional OEMs. Tier 1s are moving backwards in the supply chain to sell things like batteries. Tier 2s are skipping over the Tier 1s to sell directly to automakers. And then you have companies that used to specialize in graphics for video games are now major automotive suppliers. And these non-auto suppliers are becoming a bigger factor due to the heavy reliance on the same foundational autonomous, connected, shared, and electric technologies. Many modes of transportation are converging. What does this mean? The future of mobility will impact more than auto. The future of mobility is multimodal. A lot of times around here, we refer to those 4 technologies, autonomous, connected, shared, and electric, as vehicles. But the world doesn't look at it that way. They look at those technologies as the through lines between the mobility that takes place across air, land, space, and sea of people and goods. So in the chart on the left, you see that autonomous tech will grow. It's about 3.3 trillion by 2030. There's that year again, 2030. But self-driving cars are only a portion of the market. For instance, shipping innovations are changing how smart infrastructure impacts state economies, from smart customs ports to autonomous freight solutions and last mile delivery. And autonomous technology should reduce logistics costs by 47% by 2030. Commercial ground and aerial drones could represent up to 80% of consumer goods deliveries by even 2026, so before 2030. And a single global shipment currently can involve 30 organizations and over 200 interactions across various infrastructure assets. And so our strategy with this office is really to capture as many of those interactions as we can. And other states, other countries should be thinking about that the same way. And further on, when you think about fleets, and fleets are such a big conversation right now, and especially with EVs, using an electric bus instead of a diesel bus could save a district $6,000 per seat, or around $230,000 per bus over a 14-year lifespan. And these buses are actually a better source of distributed power because of their usage patterns. They're predictable, and they're leveraged during off hours. They're idle at precisely the times when energy demand is at its peak, midday and during the hot summer months. So by storing and drawing power from a fleet of parked school buses, for example, utilities can avoid wasting surplus energy from renewables or cranking up natural gas power. For example, let's say we have another polar vortex and the grid goes down and a nursing home needs power. You can just roll a school bus over there to help solve the problem in the interim. I mean, those are the types of examples where it's not just tech for tech's sake. It's not just improving the infrastructure, actually tying infrastructure improvement to helping someone in a crisis. And that's what this stuff should all be about. And so Michigan, we believe, can leverage its automotive advantage to drive other transportation modes forward, like shipping and last mile delivery. Two areas I think of growth that we really need to look at over the next 2 years are at our border crossings, for example. I mean, our border crossings are globally significant, but admittedly underutilized. Michigan is home to 2 of the top 3 busiest rail ports in the US. However, Michigan is not a top 5 rail state due to perceived rail congestion in Detroit and a lack of infrastructure on Port Huron. Smart infrastructure that enables new mobility can alleviate this. And then when it comes to drones, Michigan ranks in the bottom half of being a commercial drone-friendly state. Yet, Michigan has multiple ground and aerial drone test sites and training programs. Look no further than Ann Arbor with MAIR and the work of the aerospace school. Michigan State University, Kettering University, Michigan Tech, Michigan Unmanned Aerial Systems Consortium Testing Center, which is 11,000 square miles of airspace in Alpena, Northeast Michigan as a mobility player in drones. I mean, that's an important point too, that, the state is the mobility state. It's not just Southeast Michigan that's driving some of these technologies forwards. And when you think about some of the industry players, like Michigan drone startups have actually raised almost $40 million in venture capital in the last 5 years. But these stories go untold because we haven't traditionally stitched them together in a way that is a narrative that the rest of the country and the rest of the world can hear about. And so hopefully with this office, we'll be able to, tell the drone stories as well as we're telling the auto story going forward. The second market trend is workforce evolution. So the jobs impact of mobility and electrification will be significant. Nationally, mobility industry will need 45,000 new people with computer-related engineering skills by 2030. Michigan's going to need about 12,000 of those to retain its pole position. Yet only Illinois is losing more tech grads when compared to peer states. I mean, homegrown talent must be retained. Michigan continues to graduate more tech professionals than it adds new tech jobs. This means we got to all come together. This isn't just a university thing. Michigan's government, university, business leaders, we got to work together to upgrade university curriculums, tying them more to on-demand employer needs and working on corporate credentialing programs. We can't have a situation where a really good student graduates from University of Michigan, gets a great job at Ford or FCA or Toyota, and then has to be retrained day one. What a waste. We can solve that before the kid even graduates if we work together a bit more. It's all going to come down to upskilling and reskilling. And right now, I can't share more, but we are working on thinking about really targeted initiatives to address both of those things. Next market trend, more competitive R&D and startup environments. Startups have enriched Michigan's business R&D environment. Michigan's the second highest receiver of VC funds to mobility and electrification startups, but that's still just a tenth of California. And if you look at the graph, unlike some of the other regions, 94% of our VC funds for mobility startups go towards hardware startups. Software startup founders often get educated here and then take their ideas elsewhere. This matters. Mobility related startups matter. In fact, last year, the US gained about 325,000 jobs from startups. 4.6% of those were mobility startup jobs. Michigan gained about 11,000 jobs from startups in 2019. 7.2% of those were mobility startup jobs. So Michigan and mobility startups, and these startups have a larger job creation impact in Michigan than they do nationally. Moving on. Fourth market trend, the increasing importance of smart infrastructure. And I think John Paracchio is on the line and he can attest. I mean, this is a fascinating space for a couple of reasons. So smart infrastructure, we believe, is a new and cutting edge economic development tool. The states, sure, the Department of Transportation owns infrastructure, but it's also this like critical new currency for other state departments, whether it's Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, or the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. Infrastructure can be a powerful economic development tool that can drive business attraction, create jobs, new business models. And frankly, that's what these larger companies are looking for when they want to open a manufacturing assembly line or anything like that. Michigan's well positioned, and especially Ann Arbor is the home of the largest vehicle to infrastructure technology deployment. However, to continue competing globally, we need to keep creating global firsts. And why this is important, it's really twofold, and we can really do two very important things here. One probably is more important than the other. So our smart infrastructure can create economic opportunity as it's saving lives. So almost 10,000 fatal car crashes in Michigan over the last decade, 94% due to human error. So the sooner this stuff can be deployed, the more lives can be saved. And as we're doing that, MDOT has activated nearly 500, I think it's 600 now, miles of technology-enabled corridors. In turn, General Motors, Toyota, 3M, Bosch, Ford, Magna, Waymo, Continental, just to name a few, are tested on it. Key takeaway there is where companies test, they invest. We're seeing that right now in Texas, Arizona. These companies aren't just down there, they're testing autonomous trucking or autonomous ride sharing services. They're creating jobs down there. And that's why this stuff is important. So over the last decade, because of the industry disruption that I've described, it's actually accelerated the future of mobility in Michigan and also the future of electrification in Michigan. We've seen an actually consistent drumbeat of new investment from companies in this disruption that just need to be closer to the end customer and need reliable manufacturing expertise more than ever. There's been over $41 billion in new OEM and supplier investment over this last decade and 90,000 new jobs. And it's not just the automakers. You can see 21 automakers, 1,800 suppliers, and new mobility companies across the board have chosen Michigan. So this new investment is more than any other region in the United States and also North America. And you can see how we stack up. I mean, it's a clear, decisive win. And here are just some examples of just like last year, which is crazy, right? So Waymo made a $13.6 million investment in Detroit to build the world's first factory, 100% dedicated to autonomous vehicles. This partnership with Magna is to equip all electric Jaguar I-Paces and Chrysler minivans, and that's 400 new jobs. GM made a big announcement yesterday. Michigan's going to see about 150 million of that, but they also made a $3 billion investment at the Hamtramck location to retool production for electric pickups, and that's 2,200 jobs. FCA, $2.1 billion investment at its Detroit location to aid in the production of the electric Durango and the next generation Grand Cherokee. That's 1,100 jobs. And then Ford, the $700 million investment at the Dearborn headquarters to produce the all-new F-150 and the new production of the Raptor. That's 1,500 jobs. So in turn, what you're seeing is our local companies are investing, and that's enticing some of these other companies who, I don't know, could go anywhere in North America, and they're looking for a landing zone in North America, but they choose Michigan. You look at Akasol, a German battery technology company. They could have won anywhere, but they chose Michigan, and they'll focus on the second generation OEM battery system that they're creating right here. So Michigan, and this is sort of just plays into the narrative. I'm almost summarizing in a way that I could keep going, but I will be quick here. But Michigan's unique mix of regional assets give tech clusters like Silicon Valley, Israel, and other high growth markets many opportunities for deep partnership. And we can spend an hour on each of these. But you look at some of these high growth tech markets that have a high concentration of software companies needing like rapid prototyping, low volume manufacturing. We have that in spades. Factories operating with excess capacity, especially during off cycles. Risky supply chains in international markets, cost prohibitive, IP theft risk. We have deep, reliable manufacturing expertise and infrastructure. You look at end customer base. You could start in Silicon Valley, or you can start in the Southeast or Japan, but in a lot of cases, if you really want to end up on a vehicle, you probably need to talk to someone in Dearborn, Saline, Auburn Hills, or Detroit. Same with testing. Other places, high growth markets, Austin, Texas, Boston, Silicon Valley, limited access to diverse testing environments and connected infrastructure. We have Four Seasons testing environments, and the list goes on and on and on. But we have strong competitors, so it's critical that the state's mobility and electrification programs be resourced to keep up. And that's what we're working on now. I've been in this job since July, and majority of it, sure, we've scored some early wins, and I'll talk about that in a second, but a lot of it has been making sure that this industry gets resources, and that it gets the type of exposure in state government that it needs. And you look at all of these different regions here, I mean, with San Francisco and Silicon Valley, it's access to venture capital and talent. Shanghai, it's about EVs and EV subsidies. Israel, it's about startups. It's the best startup ecosystem in the world. Munich, it's about corporate R&D. The thing about that is they're not one-trick ponies, but those stories are incomplete. I don't think they compare to Michigan because I think we have all four of those in a very major global way.